Unsolved.
The Zodiac Killer Case. Sheriff Bill at Lake Berryessa, Part 2. So in the first part of this video, we were at where the detectives were at Lake Berryessa looking at the footprints on the ground, and so we focus on the Zodiac's footwear. Now here's a photograph of the footprint, and it looks to me to be 12 inches long, not 13 like in the report. And there's several things written on the photograph. At the top right it says 26. That's for how many lines there are on the sole. And then it says 10 on the bottom for how many lines there are on the heel. And there's like 10 little lines to the side indicating each line. So I guess to do the count. And then here's another photograph, and you can see the width of the sole is about 4.5 inches. Now for some reason, the sheriff brought in Mr. Basil Merrill Jones, who was a retired Air Force Master Sergeant, and he produced a pair of Air Force boots, which he stated were issued to all Air Force personnel. Mr. Jones stated the shoes are primarily designed as a windwalker shoe. However, most Air Force personnel and many of the civilian personnel employed at Air Force bases have this type of shoe. Sergeant Narlow advised that the design of the sole of the shoe brought in by Mr. Jones exactly matched the cast design of the footprint made at the scene of the crime. The shoe has a circular design, 1¼ inches in width, on the outside instep of the sole. Inside of the design is printed Avon Oil Resistant Superwear AUYNA. So here's a look at some boots that might have been what the Zodiac was wearing. And then on the sole, right here, you can see that label on the bottom, but it's AVYNA, not AU, as in the police report. So searching the internet, I found these on eBay. So these shoes on eBay are probably the same kind of shoe that the Zodiac was wearing. Now with regards to the suspect's tires imprints on the ground, I learned a little bit here. If you look at Brian Hartnell's car, you can see the tires aren't very wide like nowadays. Now the sheriff determined that the suspect's vehicle, the front tires weren't of the same size. The front right one was 4.5 inches wide and had parallel tread, not very sophisticated tread. And then the left one was 5.5 inches and had a more complicated tread on the tire. And the sheriff determined the distance from the left tire to the right tire was 52 inches. But the standard method of measuring that would be from the middle of the tire to the other middle of the tire. So it's more like 57 inches. And the sheriff noticed the writing on the passenger door of Brian Hartnell's car. And here they probably realized that the attacker was the Zodiac killer. And you can see the Zodiac killer's writing, and I've covered that in other videos and probably will expand on that again later. So here's the route traveling from Napa to Lake Berryessa. And we're real close to Lake Berryessa already. And so you turn left here on Berryessa and Knoxville Road. And then the first thing you go through is Spanish Flat. Then you go by that AMW root beer. That's in the yellow circle. And then the park headquarters is right there. And then above it is the crime scene. And then above that is Rancho, I forgot, Monticello, where Ron Fong got his boat and reported the crime. Now, Miss Johnston, Miss Jensen, and Miss Chase were in the area, but they were there at approximately 3 p.m. when they parked their car, and then they saw a suspicious man around 3:30 p.m. until around 4 p.m. when he left. I don't believe the time matters, except that they were there before the stabbing, but their description of the man and his vehicle that he was driving that matters. Miss Chase stated that on September 27th at approximately 3:30, she and her two girlfriends parked their vehicle at a location 2 miles north of the A&W root beer stand on Knoxville Road. When they left their car, they noticed a white male subject in a late model silver blue Chevrolet two-door sedan drive into the lot behind them. Miss Chase related that she and her friends proceeded to the beach area where they were sunbathing in their bikinis, and after approximately a half hour, they observed what appeared to be the same subject who had parked their car watching them. Ms. Chase described the man as being 6 foot tall, weighing 200 to 210 pounds, muscular build, nice looking, wearing dark pants and a dark pullover shirt. Ms. Jensen described the car as a 1966 or 1967 light blue Chevrolet with California license plates. Miss Jensen advised she thought the vehicle was a two-tone sedan and described the headlights as being long rather than round. She stated the vehicle also had a tinted rear window glass. Miss Jensen described the subject as being approximately 28 years of age, 6 foot to 6'2", 200 to 225 pounds, black hair, possibly styled, with the part on the left, rounded eyes, thin lips, medium nose, straight eyebrows, small ears, well built, rather nice looking. Subject was wearing a black short-sleeved sweater shirt, punched up in the front, a white t-shirt hanging out in the back, and dark trousers. Ms. Johnson stated that she had observed a late model Chevrolet sky blue in color with rear tail lights appearing to be long rather than round in the Lake Berryessa parking area where she and her friends parked their car at approximately 2:55 on September 27th. Ms. Johnston described the subject as approximately 30 years of age, 6 feet tall, stocky build, wearing a black short-sleeved sweater shirt, dark blue slacks, and straight dark hair neatly combed. She stated the subject had medium-colored skin and was not wearing sunglasses. Ms. Johnson further advised she thought she saw a white belt around his back, but it might have possibly have been his t-shirt hanging out. She related that the man was fairly nice looking and had a round face. Ms. Brown reported that she was in the Lake Berryessa area on September 27th with a male companion, John, aged 22 years, also a student at Pacific Union College. Ms. Brown stated they had parked their vehicle on Knoxville Road, approximately 1 mile south of the Lake Berryessa Marina. At approximately 5:15, they observed the victims, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, driving south on Knoxville Road in Brian's white Carmagia. Dr. Roy Clifton Rayfield and his son David Rayfield. But most of the testimony is from David because he's the one that got a good look at the man out on the lake or on the lakeside. I walked all around and was shooting my gun, a .22 with a scope. That's why my dad and I went to the lake, because I could shoot my gun and not be bothered. Wouldn't be scaring or hurting anyone. My dad never saw him. He was fishing down at the lake. I saw Zodiac at a distance of about 100 yards, so I wouldn't be able to comment on his face. He was walking along the hillside about halfway between the road and the lake, but I remember him as being a stockier person. He wasn't nimble when he was walking, and when he turned to walk away, he wasn't like smooth, athletic person. To me, he seemed a little overweight and on the clumsier side. Not having followed the story or ever having been re-interviewed by the police, I didn't realize Zodiac came upon us just before he stabbed the young couple. I sort of assumed I saw him making his getaway. I tell you one thing, he didn't like the fact I was carrying a gun. He turns and looks at me and my gun, and with its scope was pretty intimidating for probably 5 or 6 seconds, and then he turned and went up the hill in a southerly direction. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved, and Friday coming up is October 11th, so I will be going over again the Paul Stein murder of the taxi cab driver, and that might be the only video this coming weekend. So I'll see you.